Hey everybody, welcome back to Flyin Miata. In part 6 of our NC Turbo installation series, we're going to route our new vacuum line. We're going to replace our map sensor. We're going to relocate our washer reservoir. We're going to upgrade our injectors. I'm going to show you how to remount your evaporative emissions solenoid. So we're installing a new vacuum line because we have two new things that need vacuum. We need vacuum for our wastegate and vacuum for our bypass valve. Now we need to know where we're going to get that vacuum. So our source of vacuum is going to be our brake booster hose. So you'll notice a couple things about our brake booster line. Number one, it has a sleeve on it. And number two, in roughly this area, you'll notice a little bit of a bulge. So in this case, it's right here. That is the check valve. So that will only allow vacuum to be drawn out of the booster. So we need to make our cut away from our check valve. So where I like to do it is right after the curve ends here, there's a little bit of a straight section before it curves again this way. And it's basically right on the edge of our sleeve here. So I'm gonna make a cut in our hose in that spot. Then I also need to cut back our sleeve so we can get some clamps on there. So first things first, let's cut our hose. Now, I'm going to take the sleeve, pull it out a little bit. So I pulled the sleeve off the hose a little bit. We'll cut another good 1/2 inch to 5/8 off. Now we'll push our sleeve back on. Okay. Now we can add our T. So out of the vacuum bag kit, we have our larger of the two T's and 2 spring clamps. So using some pliers, we'll pre-install our spring clamps onto the hose. And then we'll install our T. And I'm going to have the leg of the T point forward. Now also out of the vacuum hose kit, you have your vacuum hose. Surprise. So you'll notice there's a lot of length here, probably far more than you need. So I'm going to show you a quick and simple routing that will get you over to where you need to go with a lot of extra hose. Now we included as much extra hose as there is because you may want to hide your vacuum line. You may want to route it all the way across the front. So we've given you enough to do so. But I'm going to show you the way I will do it. I will start at my barb. I'll feed it across the intake. So underneath these EVAP and fuel lines. Route it across the harness here. And then I'm going to have it follow this electrical harness across the front of the engine. And I'll secure it periodically with some zip ties from the miscellaneous bag kit. Snip our tails. So I started by routing my line all the way to my bypass valve, but I need to insert a T so we can also have a leg go to the wastegate. So I've cut it where I thought appropriate to add the T and have the leg pointing in the direction of the wastegate with enough slack for me to tuck it underneath the compressor inlet hose and be clear of the battery cable. So now we'll attach vacuum hose to the leg of the T and route it over to the wastegate. So as we've done here, we've cut our line to work to reach between our T and our wastegate. All right, our next step in the installation is the map sensor. So we are over here at our display head because on the car, I won't be able to show you a single thing. So thankfully, we have this display head so you can see exactly what I'm going to do. So this is probably the worst part of the job. If you have a skilled friend who has small hands, buy them their favorite meal and see if you can bribe them to do this for you. So our goal here is we need to change out the stock map sensor for our new map sensor. Now, if you notice something, our new map sensor has the bracket on the wrong side. That's something we have to deal with, so we made a custom bracket to fix that problem. Now, let's get this guy out first and I'll show you how to get the new bracket installed. So, on the car, access to this is very challenging. You basically have your firewall shrink wrapped against the back of the head. So using a T20 Torx bit and perhaps a 1.5 inch or slightly shorter extension and a flex head ratchet is definitely ideal. We're going to remove the bolt that secures the factory sensor. Granted, that's after we unplug it. So at the bench, this is going to look real easy. On the car, that's a lot more challenging. Make sure you don't drop the screw once it's out because it will likely not hit the ground, so you will be fishing with magnets for quite some time. Then we will pop out our old sensor. So, our new sensor with our new bracket. So this bracket is designed to snap on. Because our 3D printed piece isn't magnetic either, we don't want it to fall off, so we made this one piece. So now we can put it in the way the stock sensor goes, and we can bolt it down. Now, before I get that far, the other thing we wanted to make sure is that you didn't possibly drop this. So we made the screw hole an interference fit. What that means is you can thread it in just a little bit, and now, well, I'll throw my tool, but the screw is part of the assembly now too. So you only have to worry about fishing one thing back in there. When it was 3 things, it was a pain. So let's get that in place. Now the only thing we have to worry about is making sure that we are lined up to where the screw is over the hole. We will take our T20 Torx, get it onto the screw, tighten it down. So now as you get close to tight, you'll notice the sensor still has some play. The reason I bring this up is as you're tightening this screw, you're going into plastic, so you do not want to put a ton of torque into it. However, it's difficult to get a feel for exactly how tight you're getting. You may have points where you feel like, hey, that's a lot of torque. But if you're able to wiggle the sensor, like what I'm able to do here, that is not tight enough. So you got to just keep going incrementally. And you're going to feel a very defined point where it's nice and tight. Now, obviously there is going to be the slightest bit of movement like this, but that's just the O-ring squishing. But there's no in-out movement. I'm not able to pull the sensor out and push it in. Once the sensor's in place, go and plug the factory connector back into it, and we'll call that done. Now, like I said, I'm making it look really easy on the back of this head. On the car, it will not be so easy. And as you see me doing it on the car, you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. So just picture this as you're doing it. Now that we're over at the car, a couple things. I've put a bungee cord onto these lines to pull them as far forward as I can to keep them out of my way, since I'm going to be reaching down back here into the abyss. Now, what you didn't see on our display head was the electrical connector. So I'm going to first need to disconnect that. They tend to be pretty sticky if they haven't been removed in a while. So I find it best to use one finger to depress the tab and then carefully use a screwdriver to try to push the plug off the sensor. I did get the connector off. So I will pull that up, partially, mostly so it's out of the way. Now, as mentioned before, we got our T20 Torx bit on a short extension and a flex head ratchet. We're going to remove the screw that holds the sensor into place. Now on the car, you're basically doing this by feel. A mirror on a stick will often allow you to get your bearings, but often you can't have that in place while you're also trying to remove the screw. Didn't quite get it all the way. I'm going to see if I can finish it without the ratchet. Got the screw out. So we can now pop the sensor out. Pull it up. Half the battle is done. So with the old sensor out, I have the new sensor assembled with its 3D printed bracket and its screw pre-threaded into the bracket, just like we showed you at the bench. So now we'll get this in place. Okay, I think I got it. We will find out soon. And lastly, don't forget to plug your sensor in. Nice hearty snap. And we can remove our bungee.
Now our next step is to relocate our washer reservoir. Now from the washer reservoir relocation kit, we have our upper bracket, we have the long bolt, and we have a 1/4 inch aluminum spacer. We're going to locate this hole on the shock tower on the passenger side. Feed our bolt through, feed our spacer onto the bolt, then we're going to thread it into this lower hole on the bracket. And we're going to get it snug for now, but we still want to be able to adjust it later, so we're not going to tighten it down yet. So from the same kit, we're going to locate our 3D printed lower mounting boss. You'll notice it has a slot made into it. That slot is going to straddle this pinch weld down here. So we'll mount it on this side of this flange here. The exact positioning is a little arbitrary. It is meant to be a snug fit, so you may have to use a little force to get it on there. But as we put our tank in, we can make small adjustments to its exact position to get it just right. So now we're going to take our washer reservoir that we removed earlier. You'll notice it has a peg on the bottom. That's what we're going to slip into our 3D printed piece. So we'll drop it down into place. And on the upper bracket, we'll use the provided bolts to secure the flanges to the bracket. You may have to experiment with moving things around to get the fitment to be just right. Once you're satisfied with the position, we will tighten these 3 bolts down with a 10mm wrench or socket. Okay. Now to be able to plug your washer pump in, we provide you with a jumper harness with the proper connectors. So we'll take our female connector, plug it into the original male. And routing is up to you. You can run it on this side of the airbox, but it's a little crowded. So I'm actually going to run it through the airbox here. Run it all the way around, and then plug it into the pump. We can secure it as needed with zip ties from the miscellaneous bag kit. So the last step of the washer reservoir is to deal with our line. Now our line is too long as it is now, but we don't really know how long it should be until we have our cowl panel back in. So we're gonna leave the trimming of this line until we have that cowl panel back in. All right, now we're getting ready to swap in the injectors that are required for the kit. Before we remove anything, I'm gonna just take a little compressed air and I'm gonna shoot a little blast at the base of each injector just to knock any of the dirt that's settled in where the injector plugs into the head. We don't want that dirt dropping into the head. Now we're gonna unplug the injectors, and for the sake of having freedom with our harness, we're gonna also unplug the coils. Now we want to liberate our harness from the fuel rail by unclipping the two clips. Now, we can just lay some towels over our intake and pull the fuel rail up and over and set it in place, which works, but we're gonna go ahead and disconnect our fuel line and bring our fuel rail over to the bench so you can have a better view of what we're doing. So here's our fuel line. And we just have to pop this red clip out and pull it off. Shouldn't have too much fuel since we purged our system earlier. And now we're going to remove the rail. And there's two bolts that require a 10mm socket. Depending on how long your rail's been in there, this can be a little tricky to remove. Out, take it over to the bench. Now with our fuel rail removed and at the bench, we gotta assume that it's still full of fuel. So I have a little container to catch it, and I'm gonna go ahead and pour it out from the inlet now. That way I don't get a whole bunch to spill out each time I remove an injector. Probably not 100% empty, but we're at least a whole lot better off. Now, we also want to take a quick look at something. If you notice, not all these injectors look the same. One of them is missing an O-ring. So that means we left an O-ring behind. So let's go back over to the head and get it fished out. So I'm going to take a pick. You want to be careful not to gouge the wall of the head. We're going to just gently grab onto that O-ring. Pull it out. So this car had a particularly dusty engine bay, and there's quite a bit of soot still in the injector port. So I'm going to just take a Q-tip. I've saturated one end in brake clean or some kind of solvent cleaner, and I'm going to just wipe it in there to get all those little specks of dirt out. Not shown on camera, right after I pulled the rail, I also hit each port with a vacuum trying to suck some of that dirt out. So our goal is mainly don't let dirt fall in and make sure things are clean. So we will get this last cylinder here. Kind of see the gunk that we're dealing with there. So I might actually give it another stab, just to make sure we're clean. So quite a bit better. And I've done that to the other 3 as well. All right, now we're gonna remove the injectors. Now the factory injectors are held in place with these clips. So on each side, there's a little spring tab that you can hit with a screwdriver. So while we give steady pressure on the injector, or steady pull on the injector, we're gonna undo these clips. And it will often take some wiggling because those injector O-rings tend to be pretty old at this point. And as you can see, ours stayed in, so we'll have to fish that out. Again, take care not to scratch anything with the end of the pick. We'll now do that for the other 3. Go one last opportunity to drain fuel. Now our new injectors are not able to utilize these clips, so we can set these old injectors and clips aside. They will not be reused. So now we'll take our new injectors. We'll use the provided lubricant and lubricate our top and bottom O-rings. Now we'll install them into the rail. Now you'll have noticed that the previous injectors were all installed with the connectors pointing straight up. Now these are split stream injectors, so once we have them all installed, we will want their final position to be as close to 45 degrees angled toward the back of the car as possible. Now this doesn't have to be an exact science. We want to get just as close as we can. This front one is the main one that we won't quite get to where we want to be, but it will be sufficient. You are able to clock these even once the rail's installed. So we'll just get it close now and we can fine tune it after we plug the rail in. All right, now we're back at the car. We'll go ahead and install our rail. We want to just make sure all the injectors seat properly. And we want to make sure that our flanges for our rail are seated against the head before we tighten down our hardware. You never want to draw down a fuel rail with hardware. Okay, so our rail is down, so we'll drop our hardware in. We will tighten our hardware with a 10mm socket. The torque spec for these bolts is 15 to 19 pound-feet. All right, so now we'll clip our harness back in. Plug our fuel line back on. We'll flip over our connectors. And as we plug in our injector connector, we will just double check our roughly 45-degree angle. And as mentioned before, the only one that we won't quite get to where we want it is the first one. So basically you just want it as far over as it will go. And we can plug in our coils. Now we're going to deal with relocating our evaporative emission solenoid. Now there are two unique versions, one for the NC1 and one that the NC2 and 3 use. Now in both cases, we have moved their original mounting points because of the turbo, so we have to give them a new home. So the kit we provide includes all the brackets you may need for either version, and whatever version you don't need, you just toss. So now I'm going to show you the NC2 and 3 EVAP solenoid. So this is the piece you will need. So the other two parts that come in the kit you will not need. So we're going to take a 10mm wrench and we're going to remove the nut that secures the clutch line bracket. With the nut removed, you'll notice on our 3D printed bracket that there are two nubs. Those nubs are going to straddle the alignment tab on this bracket. So we will slip the bracket over the stud. Make sure our alignment nubs are on either side of this alignment tab. We will reinstall our nut and tighten it down. Now we're going to take our solenoid, and you recall we removed a small bolt from the original bracket earlier, and there's this tab across the top. This tab will slot into this groove. We'll reuse the original bolt through the bracket into the solenoid. Tighten it down with an 8mm socket. And support the solenoid as you tighten it down. Now we'll take the original electrical connector, plug it in. And once we reinstall our shock tower brace, you'll see that it does conform to that. Now I've shown you how to do the EVAP solenoid on an NC2 or 3. Now we're over here at an NC1 test car where I'm going to show you how to do the EVAP solenoid for an NC1 specifically. It uses a different bracket supplied with the kit. It's going to use this metal stamped bracket as well as this 3D printed collar. Now they're going to snap together. You can see the alignment peg and the snapping peg. And you want it in this orientation with the step up. So now we'll get this installed. So we left off with our solenoid unplugged and just kind of hanging out. So you're going to come over to your shock tower, and your forward inboard shock tower nut you will remove. And you're going to install the bracket. Now before I tighten it down, I'm going to get my solenoid in place. So you can disconnect this hose, or you can just spread the tangs of the 3D printed bracket a little bit to slip the hose down in between. Now we're going to slip the solenoid through. Now this little rib on the solenoid will sit in the gap of the 3D printed bracket. We'll plug it in. And we'll just kind of look at our orientation here, make sure the hoses are free from rubbing on anything. And we'll tighten our nut down. And that's it. Thank you for joining us for video 6 of our NC Turbo installation series, where we installed our vacuum line, we replaced our map sensor, we relocated our washer reservoir, we upgraded our fuel injectors, and we relocated our EVAP solenoid. If you enjoyed this content, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. And if you had any questions during this video, definitely reach out to our tech support team. They'd be happy to help you out. Be sure to join us for our last video on this series, video 7, where we'll cover tuning and final steps. So we will see you then.